I held my son Brad's hand as we stepped into the ballroom, and immediately my breath caught in my throat. The chandelier's light was so bright it made me acutely aware of my cheap shirt and worn jeans. Everything here screamed wealth, gold accents, silk drapes, crystal glasses, and then there was me, a struggling Omega single parent who just wanted to show his son a better world. "Dad, can I get some juice?" Brad asked quietly, his wide eyes taking in every corner of the elaborate space. I smoothed down his hair, trying to appear more confident than I felt. "Yes, sweetheart. Let me see what I can find." But when I approached the refreshment table, the server looked at me like I'd wandered into the wrong universe. Her smile was sweet on the surface but carried an unmistakable edge of condescension. "Sir, these refreshments are for registered guests. Staff others have a separate section in the back." My throat went dry. Others. The word hit me like a physical blow to the chest. "Please. It's for my son. Just one glass of juice," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady and dignified. The socialite standing behind the server couldn't contain her laughter. "Oh my goodness. Look who brought their child to a charity gala like it's some kind of public park," another woman whispered, though loud enough for me to hear every word. "Omegas really should know their place. This environment isn't meant for them." My face burned with humiliation. Shame, anger, and complete helplessness crashed over me all at once. Then a scent hit me, cedarwood, rain, and pure authority. It was so potent that my Omega instincts immediately responded, my pulse quickening involuntarily. "What seems to be the problem here?" The voice was deep, commanding, and impossible to ignore. I turned around slowly. He was tall with a sharp jawline, wearing a black tuxedo that fit him like it had been crafted specifically for his frame. His gray eyes were fixed on me, intense, searching, and strangely protective. "Mr. Howard." The server immediately straightened her posture, her dismissive attitude evaporating. "Howard." I'd heard that name before. Howard Blackwell, the host of this charity gala and one of the most powerful alpha CEOs in the entire city. But he was looking at me. Only at me. I asked a question, "What's the problem?" Howard repeated, and this time his voice carried an edge of steel. The server gave a nervous smile. "Sir, this gentleman was requesting juice for his son." "Then give it to him," Howard said, his gaze now cold and sharp as it shifted to the server. "Sir, this is actually the VIP section." Howard cut her off mid-sentence. He looked at me, then down at Brad, who was still hiding slightly behind my legs. Then he did something I never expected. He crouched down to Brad's eye level. "Hey there, buddy," Howard said gently. "What kind of juice would you like? Apple or orange?" Brad's shyness melted away slightly. "Orange, please." Howard smiled, and it was genuine, warm, real. Then he walked over to the bartender himself and poured Brad's juice into an elegant glass. He returned and handed it carefully to my son. "Here you go, champion." Brad's face lit up as he accepted the glass. "Thank you, sir." Howard stood back up to his full height and looked directly at me. There was something in his eyes, respect, curiosity, and perhaps interest. "Your name?" "Terrence," I managed to say, though my voice shook slightly. "Terrence." He repeated my name like he was testing how it felt on his tongue. Then he turned toward the crowded ballroom and raised his voice. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" All conversations stopped immediately. Howard didn't need a microphone. His presence alone commanded the room. "If anyone here, staff or guest, shows disrespect to any parent or their child, this event ends right now. Is that understood?" Complete silence fell over the ballroom. The socialites slowly set down their champagne glasses. The server's face went pale. Howard looked back at me. "You're welcome here. Your son is welcome here." Then he walked away, leaving me standing there completely stunned, confused, and feeling something I couldn't quite name. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Brad was happy, drinking his juice and eating fancy cupcakes. But me? I could only think about one thing. Howard Blackwell had stood up for me. Someone had actually defended me for the first time in years. On the drive home, Brad fell asleep in his car seat. I drove through the quiet streets, but my heart was still racing. How had this evening transformed so completely? From humiliation to protection. And that scent, that powerful alpha scent that still seemed to linger in my senses, left me feeling strangely restless. I told myself it was just a random encounter. People like Howard Blackwell didn't remember people like me. but something deep inside whispered that this story wasn't over yet. When we got home, I carried Brad inside and tucked him into bed, brushing the hair from his forehead. He looked so peaceful, so innocent. He didn't know how much tonight had shaken me, how vulnerable I'd felt, how protected I'd suddenly become. I sat on the edge of my worn couch, replaying every moment. The way Howard had looked at me, the way he'd spoken my name, the way he'd crouched down to Brad's level without hesitation, treating my son with genuine kindness. Alphas like him didn't do that. They didn't notice omegas like me. They certainly didn't publicly defend them in front of the city's elite. I touched my chest, feeling my heartbeat slowly return to normal. What was happening to me? One interaction shouldn't affect me this much. One moment of kindness shouldn't make me feel this hopeful. But it did. I checked on Brad one more time, before heading to my own small bedroom. As I lay in the darkness, I couldn't stop thinking about gray eyes and cedarwood scent and a voice that had spoken my name like it mattered. Tomorrow would be different. I told myself, tomorrow I'd go back to my part-time jobs, back to struggling to make ends meet, back to reality. Tonight though, just for tonight, I let myself remember what it felt like to be seen, to be protected, to matter. Sleep came slowly, and when it finally did, my dreams were filled with ballrooms and gentle voices and the strange, impossible feeling that maybe, just maybe, my life was about to change in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The next morning started like any other. I made Brad breakfast, packed his school bag, and prepared myself mentally for another long day of juggling multiple part-time jobs. But as I was making coffee, someone knocked on the door. This wasn't a typical delivery. The messenger wore a crisp suit and held a cream-colored envelope in his hands. "Mr. Terrence Hayes?" I nodded, surprised. "Yes, from Mr. Howard Blackwell." My hand froze halfway to my coffee mug. Howard. How did he even know where I lived? I took the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a card made of embossed luxury paper that felt foreign in my rough hands. Lunch. Tomorrow. 1 p.m. My office. Below that, in handwritten script, "Bring Brad. He deserves better juice." My heart started pounding. Was this a joke? Some kind of test? Or something else entirely? "Dad." "Who was that?" Brad called from the kitchen, clutching his toy car. "Just someone," I said, because I honestly didn't know how to explain this. The entire day passed in a haze of confusion. What could this invitation possibly mean? What would someone like Howard Blackwell want with me? Maybe this was some kind of charity gesture. Or perhaps he simply wanted to apologize professionally for last night's incident. I tried to convince myself it meant nothing. But when the next day arrived and the clock showed 12:30, I found myself standing in front of the mirror wearing my best shirt and making sure Brad's hair was properly combed. "Dad, where are we going?" Brad asked, bouncing with excitement. "To an office. To see the man from yesterday." Brad's eyes sparkled. "The juice man?" I smiled despite my nerves. At least Brad wasn't anxious. When we arrived at Howard's office building, I realized the magnitude of my mistake in thinking this would be simple. This wasn't just an office building, it was a skyscraper. Glass and steel rose impossibly high, a monument to power and success. My confidence wavered. I gripped Brad's hand tighter and walked inside. The receptionist smiled warmly. "Mr. Hayes? Mr. Blackwell is expecting you. Top floor, please." The elevator ride felt eternal. Brad was fascinated by all the buttons, but I was drowning in anxiety. Each floor we climbed made my heartbeat accelerate. When the doors finally opened, I saw an open-plan office that was minimalist yet elegant. And there, standing by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, was Howard. He turned to face us. Today he wasn't wearing a tuxedo, just a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. The authority was still there, but something else too. Approachability. "Terrence," he said, and the way he spoke my name felt incredibly personal. Then he looked down. "And Brad. Welcome." Brad immediately ran toward him, all shyness forgotten. "Mr. Howard, you gave me juice yesterday." Howard laughed. A genuine, warm sound. "I did, buddy. And I have more today. Look." He pointed to a side table where orange juice boxes were arranged. Brad rushed over happily and grabbed one. Howard gestured to the chairs near his mahogany desk. "Please, sit down." We sat, me on the sofa feeling nervous, Howard in his chair, looking calm but focused. I believe in being direct, Howard began. I had a background check done on you. My stomach dropped. You? What? Standard procedure when I'm considering hiring someone. He slid a thin file across the desk. Single parent. Multiple part-time jobs. Financial difficulties. But you've never compromised when it comes to your son, his education, health, happiness. That's impressive, Terrence. My throat tightened. Why are you doing this? Because I want to offer you a position. Silence. Only the sound of Brad sipping his juice. I'd like you to become my personal assistant. I couldn't help the nervous laugh that escaped. Me? Your assistant? Yes. The salary will be competitive. Full health benefits included. And there's a daycare facility for Brad right here in this building. With professional staff. This seemed too perfect. Suspiciously perfect. But why? You don't even know me. Howard leaned forward, his gray eyes locking onto mine with intense honesty. Because last night, when everyone was judging you, you protected your son with dignity. You didn't bow down. You didn't apologize for situations that didn't warrant apologies. That's a quality I want around me. Integrity. Strength. Honesty. His scent filled the space between us again. Overwhelming, intoxicating, protective. My Omega side whispered, trust him. This is right. But my logical mind questioned, why so generous? What's the hidden agenda? I need time to think about this. I finally said, choosing my words carefully. Of course. He handed me a business card with his personal number. Call me whenever you decide. But Terrence, this isn't just a job. This could change your life and Brad's. Stability. Security. A future. He glanced at Brad, who was now spinning in the office chair playfully. And Brad deserves all of that. Tears threatened to form in my eyes, but I held them back. When Brad and I left the building, my hand was shaking as I clutched that business card. This wasn't just a job offer anymore. This was a turning point. That night, after Brad was asleep, I stared at the card, at the numbers, at the name embossed in elegant font. For the first time in years, I thought maybe, just maybe, life could actually change. I picked up my phone and typed, I accept. When do I start? The response came almost instantly. Monday, 9 a.m. Welcome to the team, Terrence. I placed the phone on my chest and closed my eyes. Was this the right decision? I didn't know. But something in my gut told me it was time to take a chance. Time to trust. Time to believe that not everyone had ulterior motives. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a very long time. Hope. Monday morning felt different from the moment I woke up. I dressed Brad carefully in his favorite shirt and chose my most professional outfit. Simple, neat, presentable. But when we arrived at the office building, my nerves came rushing back with full force. The receptionist greeted us with a genuine smile. Good morning, Mr. Hayes. Mr. Blackwell has prepared a workspace for you on the 5th floor. And Brad's daycare is located on the ground floor. I took Brad down to the daycare first. The space was incredible. Colorful, safe, with attentive professional staff members. Brad's face lit up when he saw all the toys. I'll be back soon, I said, kissing his forehead. Okay, Dad? I'll play here, Brad said cheerfully. On the 5th floor, my workspace was positioned right next to Howard's office. Glass walls, a clean desk, the latest computer equipment. It all felt surreal. Howard emerged from his office holding a coffee mug. Good morning, Terrence. Are you ready? Yes. Sir, Howard, he corrected gently. You can call me sir in formal settings, but when it's just us, use my name. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. Here's your schedule, he said, handing me a tablet. Meetings, phone calls, appointments. I don't want to overwhelm you, so we'll start with simpler tasks. Sound good? Sounds good, but simpler turned out to be anything but simple. The first 2 hours were relentless. Back-to-back phone calls, organizing files, filtering emails. Howard's schedule was packed so tightly that I found myself holding my breath between tasks. And through it all, his presence, commanding, focused, intense, kept me constantly aware that this was no ordinary boss. His alpha energy was so strong that my Omega instincts stayed perpetually alert. Terrence, where's the Peterson file? Howard asked without looking up from the documents he was reviewing. Right here, sir, I said, placing it on his desk with slightly shaking hands. But as I turned to leave, my elbow knocked into his coffee mug. Splash. Coffee spilled across his white shirt. Time seemed to freeze. My heart sank into my stomach. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I reached for tissues in a panic. Howard caught my wrist gently but firmly. Terrence. I froze completely. His touch sent an electric current through me. Warm, secure, overwhelming. Relax, it's just coffee. But his scent had intensified in response, and my omega instincts automatically reacted. My heartbeat accelerated. Breathing became shallow. Pupils dilated. I quickly pulled my hand back, stepping away. I'll clean it up. Please, no. Howard stood up, his height making me feel incredibly small. You're already overwhelmed. And this is a minor mistake. Tears of frustration filled my eyes. Sir, I'm trying so hard, I promise. I know you are. Howard's voice softened considerably. He stood close now, maintaining respectful distance, but his presence still powerful. Terrence, you don't need to be perfect. Mistakes happen. I don't expect you to master everything on your first day. I saw something in his eyes that made my breath catch. Concern. Genuine care. Understanding. Take a lunch break, he said quietly. Go see Brad. Relax for a bit. When you come back, we'll start fresh. But the meeting, I'll handle it. Go. I walked to the daycare on shaky legs. Brad was building an elaborate tower with blocks, his tongue sticking out in concentration, completely carefree. When he spotted me, he ran over excitedly. Dad, look at the huge tower I made. I hugged him tightly. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Are you okay? Brad asked innocently, studying my face. Yes, buddy. I'm perfectly fine. But the truth was, I felt confused. Why was Howard being so understanding? So patient? CEOs weren't supposed to be like this, were they? The daycare supervisor approached me. Mr. Hayes, Brad has been behaving wonderfully. Please don't worry about anything. Thank you, I said gratefully. When I returned to the office, Howard was in a meeting, visible through the glass walls of his conference room. He looked confident and powerful, but when he noticed me, he gave a slight nod. Reassuring. I sat at my desk and took a deep breath. Yes, the first day had been somewhat disastrous, but Howard hadn't fired me. Instead, he'd shown support. That evening, as I was preparing to leave with Brad, Howard stopped me. Terrence, one moment. I paused. Today was good. You worked hard. Tomorrow will be better. And the day after that, even better still. Okay. Yes, Howard. He smiled. A real, genuine smile. And that smile somehow made the entire difficult day feel worthwhile. When I got home and Brad was asleep, I made notes on my phone. Things to improve tomorrow. Ways to stay organized and efficient. Because I didn't want to lose this job. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to lose Howard either. I sat in the quiet darkness of my small apartment, thinking about how much had changed in just a few days. From that humiliating moment at the charity gala to now having a real job with benefits and hope for the future. Howard Blackwell was unlike anyone I'd ever met. He was powerful yet kind, demanding yet patient, authoritative yet understanding. And the way he looked at me sometimes, it made my heart do things I hadn't felt in years. I shook my head, trying to clear those thoughts. He was my boss. This was professional. I couldn't afford to read more into his kindness than what it was. But as I finally climbed into bed, I couldn't stop replaying that moment when he'd caught my wrist. The electricity of his touch, the intensity in his eyes. Tomorrow would be better, he'd said. I believed him, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. 2 weeks had passed since my first chaotic day at Howard's company, and gradually, the rhythm of the work became familiar. I learned to anticipate his needs before he voiced them, understood which meetings required extra preparation, and discovered his preference for black coffee at exactly 9 in the morning. He never pushed me beyond my limits, always remained patient when I struggled with unfamiliar tasks, and gave me the space to find my own solutions before offering guidance. But something else was developing beneath the surface of our professional relationship. Small gestures that lingered in my mind long after they occurred. One evening, I stayed late at the office, organizing files for an important presentation scheduled for the following morning. The clock showed 8, and the building had emptied hours ago. I was alone in the quiet space, surrounded by documents, when Howard emerged from his office wearing his coat. He was clearly preparing to leave, but he paused when he noticed me still working at my desk. You're still here at this hour? I glanced at the time, then back at him, slightly embarrassed. Tomorrow's presentation is crucial for the quarterly review, so I wanted to ensure everything was go home, Terrence. But sir, these files still need proper categorization. I'll arrive early tomorrow morning. We'll complete them together. He walked closer to my workspace, his presence commanding yet concerned. You should be with Brad right now, and you need to stop driving yourself to exhaustion like this. My pulse quickened noticeably. His scent, that distinctive blend of cedarwood and musk, intensified with our proximity, making my omega instincts hyper-aware of every small movement he made. Why? The question escaped before I could stop myself, barely above a whisper. Why do you care so much about my well-being? Howard looked directly into my eyes, and the seconds stretched impossibly long between us. Because you're different, Terrence. His voice dropped low, carrying absolute sincerity. There's something about you that I find myself unable to resist. Your unwavering dedication, your complete integrity, the selfless way you love Brad without expecting anything in return. My breath caught somewhere in my chest. Was this actually happening? Was he confessing feelings? Then he stepped backward deliberately, his professional composure sliding back into place like armor. Go. Brad must be waiting for you. I'll arrange for my driver to take you home safely. No. I can manage the subway. Terrence, please. That single word, please, carried such weight and genuine concern that refusing became impossible. When I arrived home, Brad was already asleep in his small bed. The babysitter had fed him dinner and helped him with his evening routine. I kissed his peaceful forehead gently and retreated to my own room, sitting heavily huddled on the edge of my worn mattress. Howard's words kept cycling through my thoughts endlessly. There's something about you that I find myself unable to resist. What did that mean exactly? Simple professional admiration for a hard-working employee? Or something deeper, more complicated, more dangerous to acknowledge? The next morning I arrived at the office slightly earlier than usual, and Howard was already there waiting. He smiled warmly when he spotted me approaching. Punctual as always. Excellent. We reviewed the presentation files together, sitting close at his expansive desk. His hand would occasionally brush against mine while reaching for documents. And every single time my skin would tingle with heightened awareness I couldn't explain away as static electricity. This wasn't normal workplace interaction. This definitely wasn't professional distance. But I couldn't bring myself to address it directly or create more space between us. Then one afternoon, everything shifted dramatically when the daycare supervisor called me in clear panic. Brad had developed a sudden fever and was crying inconsolably for me. I rushed to Howard's office without even thinking to knock first. Sir, I need to leave immediately. Brad is sick. Let's go, Howard said instantly, already grabbing his car keys from the desk drawer without a moment's hesitation. You? But you have that critical merger meeting in 20 minutes. Cancelled? Brad's health is infinitely more important than any business discussion. Come on. We both hurried down to the daycare together. Brad was crying with tears streaming down his flushed cheeks, his small body radiating heat. When he saw me, he reached out desperately with both arms extended. Dad, I scooped him up immediately, holding him protectively against my chest. I'm here, sweetheart. Everything's going to be all right. I promise. Howard made a swift phone call while we headed to his car. Send Dr. Martinez to my residence immediately. A child with high fever needs examination. Your residence? I was genuinely stunned by this development. Yes. He'll be more comfortable there, and frankly your apartment probably doesn't have the necessary medical supplies or space. This wasn't a command from a boss. It was genuine care from someone who truly worried about Brad's welfare. At Howard's penthouse, a luxurious space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city, the doctor examined Brad thoroughly and professionally. It's a viral fever. Nothing too serious. He needs rest. Proper hydration and medication every 6 hours. Should clear up completely within 2 to 3 days, Dr. Martinez assured us before departing. Howard had already prepared the guest room with impossibly soft sheets and multiple pillows. I laid Brad down carefully on the bed, sitting beside him while holding his small warm hand in mine. I'm right here beside you, buddy. You're completely safe now. Brad looked up at me with exhausted, glassy eyes. Is Mr. Howard a good person, Dad? I smiled despite the emotional tightness in my throat. Yes, sweetheart. He's an exceptionally good person. Howard appeared carrying a tray with homemade soup and fresh juice, having prepared them himself in his kitchen. You should both stay here tonight, he said with quiet firmness. Brad shouldn't be moved when he's this ill and vulnerable. Howard, we really can't impose on your hospitality like, please, Terrence. Allow me to do this for you both. That night, after Brad finally drifted into peaceful, fever-reduced sleep, I stepped out into the expansive living room. Howard was standing on the balcony, silhouetted against the glittering tapestry of city lights stretching endlessly below. Thank you, I said quietly, walking over to join him in the cool night air, for everything you did today. I honestly can't express how much it means to us. You don't need to thank me for basic human decency. Howard turned to face me fully, his expression serious and vulnerable. Terrence, I'm not doing any of this because you're my employee or out of some sense of obligation. My heart seemed to stop beating entirely. Then, why are you? Because I genuinely care about you. About both of you deeply. The silence that followed was intense, heavy with unspoken emotions and possibilities that terrified me. Howard, my voice shook despite every effort to control it. He moved closer, maintaining respectful distance but definitely closer than any professional boundary would allow. If this makes you uncomfortable or crosses lines you're not ready to cross, I can step back completely. No. I interrupted him quickly, almost desperately. It doesn't make me uncomfortable at all. But I'm absolutely terrified. Of what specifically? That this isn't real. That tomorrow morning everything will disappear like a dream. That I'll wake up back in my old struggling life and realize this was all just wishful imagination. Howard reached out slowly and touched my cheek with such gentle tenderness it made my eyes water instantly. This is real, Terrence, and I'm not going anywhere. I promise you that. Then he pulled me into an embrace that felt safe, warm, and utterly protective. For the first time in countless years, I felt like I wasn't facing the world completely alone anymore. Like someone genuinely cared about me and Brad. Not out of pity or charitable obligation, but because they chose to. The following morning, Brad's fever had decreased significantly, his cheeks no longer burning with unhealthy heat. But Howard firmly insisted we remain one additional day, just to ensure he's fully recovering and won't relapse. I didn't argue against staying. Truthfully, being in Howard's home felt comforting in ways I hadn't experienced since before my life had fallen apart. His presence, the safety of this beautiful space, the knowledge that someone cared, it all brought profound peace to my constantly anxious heart. But that fragile peace was about to shatter completely. Around noon, while Brad was contentedly watching animated movies in his temporary room, Howard's doorbell rang unexpectedly. He checked the intercom screen and his entire jaw visibly tightened with sudden tension. Who is it? I asked, immediately noticing the dramatic shift in his demeanor. Sienna, he said in a carefully controlled, flat tone that revealed nothing. Just hearing that name made my stomach twist with anxious dread. I'd encountered information about her during my background research on Howard's company. Sienna Reed, his ex-girlfriend, an alpha female from an extraordinarily influential political family. Howard opened the door with obvious reluctance. Sienna swept inside wearing an elegant designer dress that probably cost more than my annual rent, exuding effortless confidence and sophisticated beauty. But when she spotted me sitting casually on the couch in Howard's private home, her perfectly practiced smile became noticeably strained and artificial. Howard, darling, you neglected to mention you were entertaining unexpected house guests. Her voice maintained surface sweetness while carrying unmistakable underlying sharpness. Sienna, this is Terrence, my personal assistant. His son Brad fell ill yesterday, so I offered. Oh, how incredibly thoughtful and charitable of you. Sienna assessed me slowly from head to toe with obvious calculation. Assistant. Single parent. Omega. She emphasized that final word with deliberate significance, making it sound like an accusation rather than a simple statement of fact. Exactly your preferred type, isn't he? Sienna said to Howard with a smile that had become completely false and cold. Howard's scent shifted noticeably, becoming protective with clear undertones of controlled anger directed at her presumption. Sienna, if you don't have legitimate business here, relax, Howard. I simply came to remind you about the corporate charity dinner next week. You'll obviously need an appropriate +1 for such an important social event. She looked meaningfully in my direction. Someone suitable for that particular environment and social circle. My chest tightened painfully with the obvious implication. Her message was crystal clear without being explicitly stated. You don't belong in his world, Omega. Sienna? Howard's voice went ice cold in a way I'd never heard before. Terrence will be accompanying me as my date. He's perfectly appropriate for any environment I choose to bring him to. Sienna's eyes widened with genuine shock and barely concealed outrage. You're seriously considering bringing your assistant Omega to the Hamilton Foundation dinner? Yes. And now you need to leave my home. The tension saturating the room was suffocating and oppressive. I could barely draw breath. Sienna gave a tight artificial smile that didn't reach her calculating eyes. Of course. I'll see you at the dinner then, Howard. Then she looked directly at me with obvious condescension. You too, Terrence. Assuming you believe you can handle that particular social setting. After the door closed firmly behind her, the silence seemed to echo endlessly through the spacious penthouse. I apologize for that extremely uncomfortable interaction, Howard said, moving toward me with concern written across his features. She had absolutely no right to. She was telling the complete truth, though, I whispered, unable to meet his intense gaze. I genuinely don't fit into your world at all. I'm an Omega with a complicated past, ongoing financial struggles, and absolutely no experience with. Terrence, stop. Howard took my hand firmly but gently. I don't care whatsoever what Sienna or anyone else thinks about us. I want to be with you because I actively choose to be with you, regardless of social expectations. But this corporate dinner she mentioned, you'll attend beside me, as my partner in every sense. That word partner made my heart nearly stop functioning. Howard, I'm absolutely not ready for that level of public scrutiny. Those people will judge me mercilessly, and Brad will remain here safely with my most trusted household staff, who have extensive childcare experience. And let people judge if they want to waste their energy. I only genuinely care about what you think and how you feel. His eyes were intense with complete honesty and unwavering conviction. But I was still utterly terrified of this next step. That night, while Howard worked in his private study handling international business calls, I tried desperately to sort through my chaotic, conflicting emotions. Sienna was absolutely right about one fundamental thing. I didn't belong in that rarefied elite world. Expensive charity galas, corporate power dinners, high society expectations and unspoken social rules. I'd never learned. Then Brad appeared beside me with sleepy eyes, clutching his favorite stuffed bear. Dad, why do you look so sad and worried? I picked him up, settling him comfortably on my lap. I'm not sad, sweetheart. Just thinking about grown-up things. Mr. Howard is good though, right? He helped us when I was sick. Yes, buddy. He's exceptionally good and kind. Then you should smile more. Happy people are supposed to smile. His simple, innocent logic made me feel unexpectedly lighter somehow, cutting through my anxiety with childish wisdom. The following morning, I told Howard my final decision with as much courage as I could gather. I'll attend the corporate dinner, with you beside me. Howard's smile conveyed both obvious relief and genuine happiness at my acceptance. But, I continued carefully, needing to voice my fears, if I somehow embarrass you publicly or make terrible social mistakes, you won't do anything of the sort. I absolutely promise you that with complete confidence. He embraced me warmly, and within that protective hug, I discovered a small reserve of courage I hadn't known still existed inside me. Maybe I actually could do this impossible thing. Maybe I could step into his intimidating world without completely falling apart. The days leading toward the dinner passed in a blur of mounting anxiety and careful preparation. Howard arranged for a professional stylist to help me select appropriate formal attire. He reassured me repeatedly that everything would be fine, that he would remain right beside me throughout the entire evening. But my persistent doubts kept creeping back relentlessly. What if I used the incorrect silverware, said something embarrassingly stupid, made Howard regret bringing me into his sophisticated world? Brad noticed my constant nervousness affecting my mood. Dad, you seem worried all the time lately. I just have an important event approaching, I explained, attempting to keep my voice casual and light. With Mr. Howard? Yes, exactly. Brad considered this with serious concentration. He makes you genuinely happy though, right? Yes, he absolutely does. Then everything will be okay. Because happy people always do good things together. His childish wisdom was startlingly profound and comforting. The night before the dinner, Howard came to my modest apartment, a genuine first. He'd always maintained our interactions at either the office or his luxurious penthouse, never entering my humble home before. But there he stood in my cramped living room, looking somewhat out of place yet somehow perfectly right. "I wanted to check on how you're feeling," he said simply, with obvious concern. "I'm absolutely terrified," I admitted honestly, seeing no point in pretending otherwise. "I know you are. But Terrence, you're genuinely one of the strongest people I've ever encountered. You've survived and thrived despite every obstacle life threw at you. One dinner with boring executives is nothing compared to everything you've already overcome successfully." He pulled me close, and I allowed myself to lean against his solid, reassuring strength. "What if they all hate me?" I whispered against his shoulder. "Then they're complete idiots whose opinions don't matter whatsoever." Howard pulled back to look directly into my eyes with intensity. "The only opinion that genuinely matters is mine. And I think you're absolutely extraordinary in every way." He kissed my forehead with such tender affection it made my eyes sting with unshed emotional tears. After he departed, I stood alone in my quiet apartment and made a firm decision. I would attend this intimidating dinner. I would hold my head high with dignity. I would be brave, not because I wasn't scared, but because Howard believed in me completely, and perhaps it was finally time I started believing in myself too. The night of the corporate dinner arrived far faster than I wanted. I dressed carefully in the perfectly tailored suit Howard had arranged, which fit my frame flawlessly and made me look like someone who genuinely belonged in elite social circles, even though I certainly didn't feel that way internally. Brad clapped his small hands together excitedly when he saw my transformation. "Dad, you look exactly like a real prince from my storybooks." I laughed despite my persistent nerves, the sound emerging slightly shaky and uncertain. When Howard arrived to collect me, he was wearing an impeccably fitted black tuxedo that made him look devastatingly handsome and powerful. He paused in my doorway, his eyes traveling slowly over my appearance with obvious appreciation. "You look absolutely perfect, Terrence," he said quietly with unmistakable sincerity. My face heated noticeably under his intense, approving gaze. The venue was an exclusive five-star hotel, featuring elaborate crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors that reflected the elegant lighting. As we entered together, Howard's hand resting possessively and protectively on my lower back, guiding me forward, I felt every single pair of eyes in the enormous ballroom turn toward us with obvious curiosity. Whispers followed our path across the room. Calculating stares tracked our every movement together. Heavy judgment hung thick in the perfumed air. My carefully constructed confidence started crumbling almost immediately under the scrutiny. But then Howard took my hand firmly, his grip gentle yet deeply reassuring and grounding. "I'm right here beside you," he whispered near my ear with absolute conviction. "With you. Always." At our designated table, Howard kept me positioned close to his side protectively. Various corporate executives introduced themselves with practiced politeness, courteous on the surface, but clearly intensely curious about who I was and why I was accompanying Howard Blackwell to such an important social event. Sienna was seated at a nearby table with her own group, but I could feel her sharp gaze repeatedly landing on us throughout the elaborate meal service. Then, during the dessert course, Howard unexpectedly stood and raised his crystal champagne glass high. "I'd like to make an important announcement to everyone present." Every single conversation in the massive ballroom stopped instantly. All attention focused completely on him with rapt interest. My heart started racing uncontrollably fast. What was he doing? What was he planning? "This is Terrence," Howard said, looking directly at me with unmistakable affection. "He's my personal assistant, yes. But far more significantly than that professional role, he's someone who continuously makes me want to become better, who constantly reminds me that true success isn't measured solely in quarterly profits, but in how we treat people with basic human dignity." Complete stunned silence fell heavily over the assembled crowd. People looked genuinely shocked by this public declaration. "And I want absolutely everyone here to know clearly, Terrence is my partner, in every meaningful sense of that word." Audible gasps rippled through the crowd like waves. Shocked murmurs of surprise and speculation spread rapidly. Sienna's face turned bright red with obvious anger, humiliation, and barely contained outrage. But Howard didn't care about any of their reactions. He only looked at me with complete focus. "Terrence, I fully realize this puts you in an extremely uncomfortable public position, but I'm completely done hiding my feelings. I want everyone to know unequivocally how profoundly important you are to me." Tears filled my eyes instantly. Happy tears, overwhelming emotional tears of disbelief and joy. I stood on trembling legs and walked over to him on the raised platform. "Thank you," I whispered, with my voice breaking noticeably, "for publicly standing up for me. For always," he said simply, as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. Then, in front of hundreds of watching guests, he lifted my hand tenderly and kissed it with genuine reverence. It was simultaneously a gesture of deep respect, obvious affection, and unmistakable claim. Some people began applauding enthusiastically. Others still looked stunned into complete silence, processing what they'd witnessed. But I only saw Howard standing before me. Later that evening, back at his peaceful penthouse, we sat together on the comfortable couch in companionable silence. "Why did you do that?" I finally asked quietly. "Making such a public declaration could potentially damage your professional reputation, your important business relationships. You're infinitely more important to me than any of those concerns." Howard interrupted firmly without hesitation. "Terrence, I love you." Time seemed to stop completely in that moment. "You? What did you just say?" "I love you. Your incredible strength, your unwavering devotion to Brad, your complete honesty even when it's difficult." He cupped my face tenderly between both hands. "And I absolutely don't want to hide those feelings anymore from anyone." I couldn't stop the tears that spilled over and ran down my cheeks. "I love you too, Howard. But I was so terrified that you don't need to be afraid of anything anymore." He leaned in slowly and kissed me with perfect tenderness. It was soft, gentle, absolutely perfect in every way. Everything I'd been too afraid to hope for was suddenly real and tangible. The next morning, Brad noticed the change in me immediately. "Dad, you seem really happy today." "I am, sweetheart. Incredibly happy." "Because of Mr. Howard?" I smiled genuinely, feeling lighter than I had in years. "Yes. Because of him." Brad considered this development with characteristic childish seriousness. "Does that mean he's going to become my second dad?" Howard, who had been preparing breakfast in the modern kitchen, froze mid-motion and looked over at me with obvious emotion. I laughed, my eyes misting slightly with happy tears. "Maybe, buddy. Maybe eventually." Howard smiled warmly with unmistakable affection. "I'd work extremely hard to earn that title properly." And in that precise moment, I realized something profoundly important. This wasn't just a simple love story between two people. This was a family actively forming and growing. Three people who had found each other against impossible odds and against all reasonable expectations. Brad ran over enthusiastically and hugged Howard's legs tightly. "I'd really like that. You make my dad smile all the time." Howard picked Brad up easily, settling him comfortably on his hip. "And you both make me happier than I've ever been in my entire life." I watched them together, my beloved son and the man I loved, and felt my heart swell with emotion so intense it was almost physically painful. For years I'd struggled completely alone, fought desperately just to survive each day, believed fundamentally I didn't deserve more than bare minimum existence. But Howard had shown me something entirely different. He demonstrated that I was worthy of love, of protection, of genuine partnership, not because I'd somehow earned it through suffering and sacrifice, but simply because I existed as myself, because I was me, flaws and all. "Come here," Howard said gently, extending his free arm toward me with invitation. I joined them, and Howard wrapped his strong arm around my waist, pulling me close against his side. The three of us stood there bathed in warm morning light streaming through the expansive penthouse windows. A family, imperfect, unconventional, but absolutely real and solid. "I promise," Howard said quietly, looking at both Brad and me with complete sincerity, "to always protect you both, to always choose you, to build a life where you feel safe and loved every single day." "We promise that too," I said, my voice thick with overwhelming emotion. Brad nodded enthusiastically with childish certainty. "Yeah, we're a real team now." Howard laughed, a sound of pure, unfiltered joy, and kissed both our foreheads tenderly. In that perfect moment, I understood what home truly meant. It wasn't a physical place or a house or even financial security. It was this. These people. This love. We had finally found our way home, to each other, and nothing would ever take that away from us.